Commander Bora volunteered to lead humanity's most insane mission yet. The plan was simple in concept but terrifying in reality. Follow the retreating devourers back to their home dimension and destroy them there. No one had ever attempted interdimensional travel against hostile forces. No one had ever survived in a realm where physical laws meant nothing. The Watchers left detailed warnings about the Howling Dark, Sora had reported from her ongoing translation work. They called it a place where reality goes to die. Nothing stable can exist there for long, but they also said it was the only way to permanently defeat the Devourers. The human expedition fleet looked like a collection of junk, held together by desperation and hope. 50 ships of different sizes and origins, all modified with technology that shouldn't work but somehow did. They carried weapons made from crystallized human emotions, engines powered by controlled rage, and shields woven from the collective stubbornness of the entire human species. These modifications violate every law of physics I know, Admiral Sung Ho observed as he toured the flagship Nightmare's End. Good thing we're going to a place where physics don't work, Bo-Ra replied cheerfully. We figured if we're going somewhere impossible, we should bring impossible ships. Insu had been promoted to tactical officer for the mission. He treated the upcoming interdimensional war like the ultimate video game, complete with power-ups, boss fights, and multiple lives. His casual attitude toward cosmic horror both amused and terrified his alien colleagues. The way I see it, Insu explained to the mixed crew, we're about to enter a nightmare realm filled with creatures that eat reality. Either we'll win and save the galaxy, or we'll die horribly and become part of the nightmare ourselves. Either way, it's going to be the adventure of several lifetimes. Yunji served as communications specialist, though her job description had expanded to include maintaining sanity through dark humor. She had discovered that human jokes and sarcasm actually caused physical pain to devourers, so her comedy routines had become a form of psychological warfare. I've been practicing my material, she announced before the mission began. I've got 3 hours of jokes about interdimensional horror, cosmic insignificance, and the absurdity of existence. If we're going to hell, we might as well bring entertainment. Chief Engineer Hyunwoo had the most impossible job of all. When they entered the Howling Dark, the basic rules that made machines work would stop applying. His task was to keep 50 ships operational in a place where cause and effect were optional. I've been studying human mythology and folklore, Hyunwoo explained to his engineering teams. Turns out our ancestors had lots of stories about places where normal rules don't work. Magic Curses deals with devils. I think they were preparing us for something like this. He had redesigned critical systems to run on willpower and spite instead of conventional energy. The weapons were powered by human anger. The life support systems drew strength from the crew's determination to go home. The navigation computers used hope as a guidance system. The entry into the Howling Dark was like diving into liquid madness. Reality twisted around the human ships, turning inside out and backwards. Colors that had no names painted the void. Sounds that hurt to hear echoed from directions that didn't exist. Half the alien crew members went insane in the first 5 minutes, but the humans adapted with frightening speed. It's like a really intense fever dream, Bo-Ra reported calmly as her ship sailed through a storm of crystallized screams. Unpleasant but manageable. Kind of reminds me of finals week in engineering school. The Devourer's home dimension was a maze of impossible architecture and predatory landscapes. Cities built from fossilized nightmares stretched across horizons that curved upward into bleeding skies. Oceans of liquid fear lapped at shores made of crystallized despair. Okay, this is definitely worse than finals week, Bo-Ra amended as her fleet navigated between floating islands of carnivorous darkness. The human ships moved through the nightmare realm like they belonged there. When gravity reversed itself, they simply adapted their orientation. When time started flowing backwards, they made jokes about getting younger. When their own weapons came alive and tried to eat them, they talked the weapons back into cooperation. The secret is not to take it too seriously, Yunji broadcast to the fleet as they passed through a region where abstract concepts had physical form. Yes, we're sailing through a sea of liquid terror while being chased by the physical manifestation of entropy. But getting stressed about it won't help anything. The aliens who had retained their sanity watched in amazement as humans treated cosmic horror like a minor inconvenience. When Devourer attacks tore holes in reality itself, human repair teams simply patched the holes with determination and moved on. Hyunwoo's engineering teams performed miracles on a daily basis. They rebuilt the fundamental forces of physics when they broke. They repaired damaged dimensions using spare parts from broken dreams. They created new laws of thermodynamics when the old ones stopped working. The trick is to remember that we're humans, Hyunwoo explained to a traumatized alien engineer. We've been dealing with things that don't make sense our whole lives. Politics, taxes, family relationships, assembly instructions. This is just more of the same, but with better special effects. The first major battle in the Howling Dark lasted for 3 days, or possibly 3 years. Time was flexible in the Nightmare Realm, stretching and compressing according to emotional need rather than physical law. The Devourers attacked with weapons made from pure malevolence and despair. The humans fought back with weapons made from hope, rage, and the kind of stubborn refusal to give up that had carried their species from caves to stars. Their ammunition was forged from childhood dreams of heroism. Their armor was woven from the collective memory of every human who had ever stood up to a bully. Insu commanded the tactical response, with the casual confidence of someone playing a game he had trained for his entire life. Every human story about heroes fighting impossible odds had been preparation for this moment. Remember, we're not trying to be noble or pure, he broadcast to the attack squadrons. We're trying to be scarier than the things that scare us. We're trying to be so stubbornly, irrationally, impossibly determined that even chaos itself gets tired and gives up. The battle turned when the humans stopped trying to understand their enemy and started trying to confuse them instead. They attacked with strategies that made no sense. They used weapons that worked through sheer belief rather than physical principles. They fought like madmen who had decided that reality was negotiable. The Devourers, ancient masters of chaos, found themselves confused by an enemy that was chaotic in completely different ways. Humans embraced contradiction. They could be simultaneously terrified and courageous, logical and intuitive, brutal and compassionate. They can't figure us out, Bora reported as her ship used love as a ramming weapon against a creature made of crystallized hate. They understand chaos, but they don't understand human chaos. We're random in ways they never learned to be random. The expedition pushed deeper into the Nightmare Realm, leaving a trail of confused and frightened Devourers behind them. For the first time in cosmic history, the ultimate predators were learning what it felt like to be hunted by something more adaptable than themselves. Yoonji's psychological warfare broadcast had evolved into something that could only be described as aggressive philosophical comedy. She told jokes about the meaning of existence while reality crumbled around her. She made puns about entropy while sailing through storms of living darkness. The ultimate cosmic joke, she announced to both fleets as they approached the heart of the Howling Dark, is that the most dangerous species in the universe evolved on a small, unremarkable planet by learning to laugh at things that should have destroyed them. We're about to prove that humor really is the best weapon against the absurdity of existence. The final destination was visible ahead, a fortress built from crystallized time and space, where the oldest and most powerful Devourers waited. This would be the ultimate test of whether human chaos could triumph over cosmic order, whether hope could defeat despair, whether the universe's newest species could save reality itself from its oldest enemies. The humans sailed forward into the heart of darkness, powered by impossible technology and sustained by the kind of stubborn optimism that had always defined their species. Behind them, the aliens who had chosen to follow watched in terror and admiration as humanity prepared to become legendary. General Haerun stood on the bridge of the converted colony ship Defiance, watching her people transform peaceful vessels into weapons of war. In just 2 months, humans had taken over the military leadership of the anti-Devourer campaign. Not because they asked for it, but because they were the only ones who could win. Project Banshee is ahead of schedule, reported Sujin from the science station. The xenobiologist had become an expert on Devourer psychology, if creatures of pure chaos could be said to have psychology. We have 15 mobile fortress factories online, with 20 more coming this week. The fortress factories were a human innovation that amazed and terrified their alien allies. Each one was a colony ship rebuilt into a moving weapons plant. They could manufacture ammunition, repair damaged vessels, and serve as bases of operation in deep space. More importantly, they could adapt their production to meet changing threats. The Federation ships are too specialized, Haerun had explained to the Alien Command Council. Each vessel has one purpose. Our ships can become whatever we need them to be. Today this ship makes bullets. Tomorrow it might make bombs. Next week it could be a hospital or a factory or a fortress. One-Sick led the first major counterattack using the new human strategy. Instead of trying to protect fixed positions, the human fleets moved constantly. They appeared where the Devourers least expected them, hit hard with weapons designed to cause maximum pain and fear, then disappeared before the creatures could adapt. "We're not fighting a war of territory," One-Sick explained to his mixed human and alien crew. "We're fighting a war of nightmares. We want them to be afraid to sleep. We want them to jump at shadows. We want them to know that humans are coming, but never know when or where." The key breakthrough came when Sujin discovered why human minds were resistant to devourer influence. The creatures fed on organized thought patterns and predictable behavior. But human brains were wonderfully chaotic. "Your species never achieved perfect mental harmony," Sujin told a gathering of alien scientists. "You still argue with yourselves, change your minds, have random thoughts and emotional reactions. The Devourers can't get a grip on minds that are constantly changing." She demonstrated by hooking herself up to a machine that measured mental patterns. When she tried to think logically about a problem, the readings were smooth and organized. But when she let her mind wander freely, thinking about food and her childhood and a song she liked all at the same time, the patterns became wildly chaotic. "This is what human thinking looks like most of the time," she said. "Random, emotional, creative, and completely unpredictable. It drives the Devourers crazy because they can't find patterns to exploit." The alien observers were fascinated and disturbed. Their own minds were much more organized and efficient. But that efficiency made them vulnerable to creatures that fed on mental order. "We can train your people to think more like humans," Sujin offered. "It won't be comfortable. You'll have to learn to embrace confusion, to let your minds wander, to think several contradictory thoughts at once." Some aliens volunteered for the mental training. Others preferred to stay in support roles, providing resources while humans did the actual fighting. Both choices were respected. Captain Jaewon's ship Pioneer became the flagship of the human fleet, not because it was the newest or strongest, but because it perfectly represented human philosophy. The ship was a collection of parts from dozens of different vessels, held together by creative engineering and stubborn determination. "Look at this beautiful mess," Jaewon said proudly, as he gave Admiral Sung-ho a tour. The life support system came from a mining ship. The weapons are modified industrial tools. The computer runs on 3 different operating systems that shouldn't be compatible. By all logical standards, this ship should fall apart. But it works because we don't let logic limit us. The Admiral studied the chaos of systems and modifications. "How do you keep track of it all?" "We don't," Jaewon replied cheerfully. "We just fix whatever breaks and improve whatever we can. The ship changes every day. Sometimes we discover features we forgot we installed." This approach to technology frustrated alien engineers, but proved incredibly effective against the Devourers. When the creatures tried to infiltrate and control human systems, they found networks that were so chaotic and unpredictable that there was nothing stable to attack. Kiho had become the chief engineer for human fleet operations. His teams worked miracles with salvaged equipment and creative problem-solving. They could repair battle damage using parts that weren't designed to work together. They could modify weapons in the middle of combat. They could keep ships running when by all logic they should have died. "The secret is not to plan too much," Kiho explained to his mixed teams of human and alien engineers. "Yes, we need basic safety and functionality. But beyond that, we adapt. We improvise. We make things work through creativity and determination, not perfect design." The war turned truly in humanity's favor when they discovered the Devourer's greatest weakness. The creatures were ancient and had always won through the same methods. They expected their enemies to react with fear, organize defensively, and try to preserve what they had. Humans did the opposite. Instead of protecting their colonies, they evacuated civilians and then turned the worlds into traps. Instead of building defensive walls, they created mobile hunting parties. Instead of trying to preserve their perfect technology, they made weapons that were designed to be destroyed in spectacular explosions. We're teaching them that fighting humans means losing everything they think they understand about war, Hyrin announced at a strategy meeting. "Every time they develop a counter for our tactics, we abandon those tactics and try something completely different." The psychological effect on the Devourers was devastating. Creatures that had existed since the beginning of time, found themselves constantly confused and afraid. They couldn't predict human behavior because humans didn't follow their own predictions. In Su, a young tactical officer, put it simply, "We're playing by different rules. Actually, we're not playing by rules at all. We're making it up as we go along, and it's working because they don't know how to fight people who fight like that." The fortress factories began producing weapons that no civilized species had ever imagined. Missiles that changed targets randomly during flight, bombs that exploded with different effects each time, communication jammers that worked by broadcasting human music and poetry, creating such beautiful chaos that devourer minds couldn't function properly. But the real weapon was human creativity powered by human emotion. Love for their families gave them strength to fight impossible odds. Anger at the destruction of innocent worlds gave them the fury to become more terrifying than terror itself. Hope that they could build something better gave them reason to keep fighting when victory seemed impossible. The aliens watched in amazement as humans turned their greatest weaknesses into strengths. Their tendency toward chaos became tactical unpredictability. Their emotional nature became psychological armor. Their habit of arguing among themselves became adaptive flexibility in battle. "Your species is the most dangerous thing in the galaxy," Admiral Sung Ho told General Hai-Rin after watching a particularly brutal human victory. "You can become absolutely terrifying monsters, but you choose to be something better. How do the rest of us sleep peacefully knowing what you're capable of?" "The same way we sleep peacefully knowing what we're capable of," Hai-Rin replied. "We remember why we choose to be better than our worst instincts. We remember that the point of being strong is to protect the weak, not to become what we're fighting against." The Devourers were retreating steadily now, pulling back toward their original prison world. But the humans weren't content to simply drive them away. They had learned too much about these creatures to let them remain a future threat. The final phase of the war was about to begin, and it would require humans to become more monstrous than they had ever been before, while somehow remaining human enough to deserve victory. The galaxy held its breath and watched its newest, most dangerous protectors prepare for the ultimate battle. The Devourer outbreak spread like a disease across 3 star systems. Each new world they touched became a nightmare realm where reality bent and twisted. The Galactic Federation's finest military minds watched their careful strategies fail again and again. Young Su sat in a briefing room full of alien generals, explaining tactics that made them want to leave the room. He was just a private, barely old enough to vote, but he had grown up watching human horror movies and reading about ancient Earth wars. "The problem with your thinking is that you want clean victories," Young Su told the assembled commanders. "You want to win without getting dirty. But these things feed on clean thinking. You need to fight ugly." Admiral Sung Ho leaned forward. "What do you mean by ugly?" "I mean chemical weapons that burn their flesh off. Psychological attacks that drive them crazy. Traps that are so cruel you'll feel bad about using them. The kind of warfare that makes civilized people sick." Young Su smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "Lucky for you, humans wrote the book on uncivilized warfare." He-Jin had been working for days on what she called the Nightmare Protocol. It was a complete guide to fighting enemies that didn't follow normal rules. Every page made the alien observers more uncomfortable. "Traditional military doctrine assumes your enemy thinks logically," she explained to Captain Jae-won. "But the Devourers don't think at all in ways we understand. They're pure hunger and chaos, so we fight them with controlled chaos." The first test came when a Devourer swarm attacked the colony world of New Geneva. The Federation fleet tried their standard defensive formation. The creatures tore through their lines like paper, draining power from the ships and turning their own weapons against them. Then the humans took over. Hai-Jin's teams didn't form neat battle lines. They scattered across the system in small groups, each one acting independently. They used weapons that were barely controlled explosions, tactics that seemed insane, and communication codes that changed every few minutes. "What are they doing?" Admiral Sung Ho demanded as he watched human ships weaving between the Devourers in patterns that hurt his eyes to follow. "Something we've never tried," Jae-won replied. "They're fighting like humans." The human ships were old and patched together, but they moved like living things. When a Devourer tried to drain their power, the ship's chaotic systems just adapted and kept working. When the creatures attempted to predict their movements, the humans changed tactics for no logical reason. Min-ho led the most dangerous mission of all. He took a team of volunteers into the heart of the Devourer nest that had formed in New Geneva's capital city. The city had become something from a nightmare, Buildings twisted into impossible shapes, gravity worked sideways, and the air itself seemed hungry. "Remember," Minho told his team as they prepared to enter the nest, "we're not heroes. We're not trying to be noble. We're trying to be so nasty and unpredictable that even nightmares are afraid of us." His team carried weapons that no civilized species would use, bombs that spread burning chemicals, devices that created painful sounds and lights, weapons designed not just to kill, but to cause suffering and fear. The aliens monitoring the mission were horrified. This wasn't how wars were supposed to be fought. This was savage and cruel, but it worked. The Devourers, for the first time in their ancient existence, encountered something that frightened them. The humans didn't just fight to win. They fought to hurt, to cause pain, to be more terrifying than the terrors they faced. "You have to understand," Dongwu explained to a group of sickened alien observers. "Humans have been fighting monsters for our entire history. Not just external monsters, internal ones too. We know darkness because we carry it with us. We know how to be cruel because we've had to be cruel to survive." The turning point came when Sora made another discovery in the Watcher ruins. Hidden in the deepest chambers, she found records of how the Devourers had been defeated before in other galaxies. They weren't beaten by advanced weapons or perfect strategies, she reported. They were beaten by species that could become more monstrous than they were. Species that understood that sometimes you have to embrace the darkness to protect the light. The Watchers themselves had tried to stay pure and noble in their fight against the Devourers. It had gotten them all killed. Only species that were willing to become monsters could actually defeat monsters. Admiral Sung Ho finally understood when he watched human soldiers celebrate after destroying a Devourer nest. They weren't celebrating victory. They were celebrating the fact that they could become such effective killers and still choose to protect innocent people. "Your species is terrifying," he told Captain Jaewon. "You have weapons of mass destruction and you choose not to use them. You can fight like demons and you choose to be peaceful. How do you live with that kind of power?" "Very carefully," Jaewon replied. "And we never forget what we're capable of. That's what makes us human. We know exactly how monstrous we can be, so we work very hard to be better than that." The war continued, but now the Devourers were afraid. They had expected to face the same kind of organized, predictable opponents they had always defeated. Instead, they found themselves fighting creatures that were just as chaotic and dangerous as they were, but who chose to use that chaos to protect rather than destroy. Youngsu's psychological warfare teams developed new weapons every day. Not devices that killed, but methods that drove the Devourers insane with fear and confusion. They used human music that followed no logical patterns. They broadcast human stories that were so randomly violent and redemptive that the creatures couldn't process them. "We're not just fighting them," Youngsu explained. "We're teaching them what it feels like to be prey. For the first time in their existence, they're the ones being hunted by something scarier than they are." The galaxy watched in fascination and horror as humanity revealed its true nature. Not the peaceful traders and miners everyone thought they knew, but something far older and more dangerous. A species that had survived by being the most effective predators on a planet full of predators. Minho's final assault on the main Devourer hive lasted 3 days. His team used tactics that violated every rule of civilized warfare. They fought with a combination of advanced technology and primitive savagery that should have been impossible. When it was over, the Devourers began to retreat from the 3 infected systems. Not because they were defeated, but because they had learned to fear something more than they feared nothing. "The creatures are pulling back to their prison world," Sora reported. "They're scared. For beings that have existed since before time began, they've learned what terror feels like." But the humans weren't finished. They had tasted war against ultimate evil, and they had found they were very, very good at it. The galaxy would never see them the same way again. Neither would they see themselves the same way. The monsters had met their match in creatures that chose to be monsters only when necessary, but could become the most effective monsters of all when the situation demanded it. The real war was just beginning. Dr. Sora climbed down into the deepest mining tunnel with a small team. The walls were covered in strange symbols that glowed faintly in the darkness. Her translation device worked slowly on the ancient language, piece by piece revealing a story that made her blood run cold. Above ground, Commander Taemin was learning hard lessons about fighting an enemy that didn't follow any rules. His ship had lost power 3 times during the night attacks. The creatures seemed to drain energy from anything too advanced or organized. Our computers keep failing, reported Kehoe, the human engineer who had volunteered to help fix the alien ship. But our old mechanical systems work fine. It's like these things hate technology that thinks too much. Kehoe was young and curious, always asking questions about how things worked. He had noticed something important during the fights. The creatures moved in patterns around human equipment, but they attacked alien technology directly. Your AI systems try to predict what the creatures will do next, Kehoe explained to Timon. But these things don't think like normal life. They exist in chaos. When your computers try to understand them, the creatures use that connection to break your machines. Taemin found this hard to believe. His people had the most advanced technology in the galaxy. How could primitive human equipment work better than Federation systems? The answer came when Captain Jae-won arrived with the human research vessel Pioneer. His ship was old and patched together from different parts. It looked like it might fall apart at any moment, but it was the first ship to survive a direct creature attack without losing power. "We build things different than you do," Jae-won explained to the gathered alien commanders. "Your ships are perfect. Every system works together in harmony, but these creatures feed on that kind of order. Our ship is chaos held together with hope and metal tape. There's nothing for them to latch onto." Down in the tunnels, Sora made a discovery that changed everything. The symbols told the story of an ancient civilization called the Watchers. They had been the most advanced species in their galaxy, with perfect technology and perfect order. They had also been the first victims of the creatures they called Devourers. The Devourers were not from any normal dimension. They came from a place where chaos ruled and reality had no meaning. They consumed organized life, feeding on the patterns that made civilizations work. Entire star systems had fallen to them in the Watchers' galaxy. The Watchers built this prison with their last strength, Sora reported over the radio. They trapped thousands of Devourers here and sealed the planet. But they knew the prison wouldn't last forever. They left instructions for whoever found this place. "What kind of instructions?" Taemin asked. Sora's voice was quiet and strange. "They say only one type of species can fight the Devourers effectively. A species that lives in controlled chaos, one that can be organized when needed, but never becomes too predictable. They called them the unpredictable children of a small star." The silence on the communication channel lasted for a long time. Everyone understood what the Watchers had meant. "Humans," Jae-won said finally. They were talking about humans. Admiral Sung-ho of the Federation fleet arrived 2 days later with 50 warships. He was confident that organized military power would solve the problem quickly. The Devourers had spread to 2 more worlds by then, consuming mining stations and research outposts. Sung-ho's first assault was perfect by military standards. Coordinated attacks, precise timing, overwhelming firepower. The Devourers destroyed his entire first wave in 30 minutes. "They know what we're going to do before we do it," Sung-ho reported in confusion. "Every time we form up for attack, they're already moving to counter us. It's like they can read our battle plans." "Because they can," Kehoe explained. "Your tactics follow logical patterns. Your officers think the same way. The Devourers feed on that kind of predictable thought. The more organized you are, the easier it is for them to drain your power and control your actions." Meanwhile, Hyojin was developing new fighting methods with the human security teams. She called it the Nightmare Protocol. Instead of following military doctrine, her people used tactics that horrified the alien observers. They attacked from unexpected angles. They used weapons that made no logical sense. They fought with the kind of desperate creativity that came from watching horror movies and reading about ancient human wars. "We've been preparing for this fight our whole lives," Hyojin told the alien commanders. "Every human story about monsters, every nightmare we've ever had, every time we've had to fight something stronger than us. We know how to be unpredictable because that's how we survived on Earth." Young-soo, a young human soldier, suggested tactics that made the aliens sick to think about. Chemical attacks that burned the creatures' strange flesh. Psychological warfare that confused their hive mind thinking. Fighting methods that were ugly and brutal but effective. "You want to know our secret?" Young-soo said to a group of disgusted alien officers. "We're not afraid to become monsters ourselves. These things are nightmares? Fine. Humans have been fighting nightmares since we lived in caves. We know how to be scarier than what scares us." The proof came when Minho led a small team into a devourer nest. He was an explosives expert who had grown up reading about human wars. His team carried improvised bombs made from mining charges and human stubbornness. They didn't follow any battle plan. They made decisions based on gut feelings and desperate hope. They fought like cornered animals using dirty tricks and pure spite. And for the first time since the war began, the devourers retreated. The alien observers watched in amazement and fear as the humans drove the creatures back into their holes. These weren't the civilized people they thought they knew. These were something much older and more dangerous. "Now you understand," J1 said to Admiral Sung Ho as they watched the successful attack. "Humans aren't peaceful because we can't fight. We're peaceful because we know exactly how good we are at war. We've spent thousands of years learning to be monsters. We just choose not to be most of the time." Sora emerged from the tunnels with the complete Watcher records. The ancient civilization had left detailed information about the Devourer's weaknesses and how to fight them. But all their weapons and tactics required one thing the Watchers didn't have: the ability to embrace chaos while still choosing to protect others. The strength to become monsters without losing the reasons to fight, the kind of controlled madness that only came from a species that had survived by being unpredictable. The Watchers were too perfect to fight the Devourers, Sora explained. They couldn't adapt fast enough. But humans are perfectly imperfect. We're organized chaos. We're exactly what's needed. The war was about to change. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations would have to step aside and let the crazy, primitive humans take the lead, because sometimes the only way to fight monsters was to unleash monsters of your own. The distress signal came from the edge of known space. Commander Taman studied the weak transmission on his ship's main screen. The signal was rough and broken, filled with static that hurt his sensitive ears. His crew of elite peacekeepers had never heard anything like it. "The signal comes from Kepler 442b, his navigation officer reported. "It's a mining world. The records show humans work there." Taman made a sound of disgust. Humans were new to the galaxy. They were loud, messy, and used old technology. Most civilized species avoided them. But the Galactic Federation had rules. All species deserved help in emergencies. "Set course for the human colony," Taman ordered. "Maximum speed." 3 days later, they arrived at Kepler 442b. The planet looked normal from space. Red soil, thin atmosphere, small settlements scattered across the surface. But something felt wrong. Taman's ship detected no radio chatter. No mining ships moved between the surface and orbital stations. "Sir?" His weapons officer called out. "I'm reading strange energy signatures from the main colony. Something big is happening down there." Taman opened a communication channel. "Human colony, this is Federation Peacekeeper Ship Harmony. We received your distress call. Please respond." Static filled the bridge. Then a human voice broke through, rough and tired. "Thank the stars," the voice said. "This is Dong Wu, mining foreman at Site 7. We need immediate evacuation. The creatures, they're everywhere." "What creatures?" Taman asked. "Please explain your situation." "No time to explain. They come up from the deep mines at night. We've been fighting for 3 weeks. Lost half our people. If you can help us, do it now." Taman looked at his crew. They all had the same confused expression. What could threaten humans that badly? Humans were known for being hard to kill. "We're sending down a rescue team," Taman said. "Prepare your people for evacuation." The landing party consisted of 12 peacekeepers with the best equipment the Federation could provide. Energy shields, plasma weapons, medical scanners that could heal almost any wound. They landed near the main colony just as the sun began to set. The human settlement was a mess. Broken buildings, burned vehicles, and deep holes in the ground that seemed to go down forever. The humans who came to meet them looked terrible. Dirty, tired, and scared in a way Taman had never seen before. Dongwu was a big man with gray hair and kind eyes that had seen too much. Next to him stood Hiejin, a woman who carried herself like a soldier. She had weapons Taman didn't recognize, old-style projectile guns that fired metal bullets. "You came just in time," Dongwu said. "They'll be coming up soon. They always do when the sun goes down." "What exactly are these creatures?" Taman asked. Before anyone could answer, the ground began to shake. A low sound came from the deep holes. It wasn't quite a roar or a scream. It was something worse, something that made every living thing want to run away. "Here they come," Heejin whispered. She raised her weapon. "Stay back and watch. You'll understand soon enough." The creatures that came up from the holes were nightmares made real. They had no fixed shape. Sometimes they looked like giant spiders with too many legs. Sometimes they were flowing masses of darkness with glowing eyes. Sometimes they were almost human, but wrong in every possible way. The peacekeepers fired their plasma weapons. The energy beams hit the creatures and passed right through them. The creatures didn't even slow down. "Your weapons don't work," He-Jin called out. "Use ours." She threw extra guns to the peacekeepers. The weapons were heavy and crude compared to their advanced technology. But when the bullets hit the creatures, they screamed and fell back. The battle lasted 2 hours. Humans and aliens fought side by side against enemies that seemed to come from a different reality. The creatures were fast, smart, and hungry for something more than food. They wanted to consume the life force itself. Sora, the colony medic, worked on wounded fighters behind a barrier of overturned vehicles. She was small and quiet, but her hands moved with sure skill. As she worked, she studied the creatures' behavior. "They don't like bright lights," she told Taemin. "And they seem confused by our radio signals, like the electromagnetic waves hurt them somehow." "How long have you been fighting these things?" Taemin asked. "They first appeared 3 weeks ago," Dongwu answered between shots. "Started small. A few miners went missing in the deep tunnels. Then more appeared each night. Now there are hundreds of them." The creatures finally retreated as the sun came up. They flowed back into the holes like living shadows afraid of daylight. The humans began counting their dead and treating their wounded. Taemin was amazed. His advanced weapons had been useless, but these primitive humans had fought off monsters that could barely be hurt. They used simple tactics, basic weapons, and raw determination. "We need to evacuate everyone to our ships," Taemin said. "These creatures are too dangerous." "Won't work," He-Jin replied. "We tried that last week. They followed us. Somehow they can travel through space without ships. 5 of our evacuation shuttles were attacked before they reached orbit." "That's impossible," Taemin's science officer said. "Nothing can survive in space without protection." "Tell that to them," Dongwu said quietly. As if to prove his point, alarms began sounding from Taemin's ship in orbit. His communication officer's voice crackled through the radio. "Commander, we have a problem. Unknown creatures are attacking the hull. They appeared from nowhere. Our shields aren't stopping them." Taemin felt ice in his veins. How could creatures from a planet's surface attack a ship in space? It violated every law of physics he knew. "Sora has a theory," Hyejin said. "Tell him what you found in the old ruins." Sora looked up from her medical work. Her face was serious and frightened. "This isn't their world," she said simply. "I found writing in the deep caves. Very old writing. This planet was a prison. These creatures were locked away by someone who knew how dangerous they were. Our mining broke the seals that kept them trapped." "Who built the prison?" Taemin asked. "I don't know. But whoever they were, they left a warning. It says these creatures have consumed entire star systems before. They don't just kill. They devour reality itself." Taemin stared at the holes in the ground. Somewhere down there in the darkness, ancient horrors were waking up. And humanity, with their simple weapons and stubborn courage, were the only ones who seemed able to fight them. The war was just beginning.